2009 Modified General Project Plan lists all of the local overrides that the state intends to employ to allow the project to be built separate from the city's land use and zoning controls that would otherwise apply. Are these overrides in effect permanently? If not, what conditions in the future might trigger public review down the line?
The overrides that are specified in the project plan are in effect for as long as the project plan remains in effect. To the extent that if things should change down the road, then the project plan would be reevaluated and those overrides also reevaluated in that same context.
So are there future triggers that would, I'm sorry, I missed the end of that. Future triggers.
At this point, can't speculate what those future triggers might be. If the project plan were not to be built out as presently contemplated, we would reevaluate. But I think you should assume that if the project plan is built out and completed as laid out in the modified version, that'll be the subject of the hearing next week, that those overrides will remain in effect. To that extent, yes, they are permanent.
Thank you. Please describe security measures that will be used for both interim and permanent parking lots.
I think Forest City is prepared to put security in place through both manpower and cameras, and these parking facilities will be operated by professional parking companies that when you execute a management agreement with these parking companies, with it comes requirements for security, both again manpower and closed circuit television. That would be our expectation to provide that in the contract with the provider of the parking service.
Thank you. Was the Modified General Project Plan presented to the Community Benefits Agreement signatories? Are they aware of the changes?
Our CBA partners are aware of the changes. There are regular meetings, consultations with our CBA partners, and they are aware of the project. Again, the status of the project, we don't believe the project's changed. Again, the new timeline for the obligations and the value engineering underway for the arena, they are fully aware of and remain supportive of.
Okay. With the depressed office market, that's, I guess, commercial office market, stalled and unsold condos in the area, can the project be built on the projected 10-year schedule? If not, how does that change the projections for tax revenues from Atlantic Yards, which ESDC said last month would be higher than initially projected?
Nobody has a crystal ball about the real estate market, but we believe that, again, based on the affordable program here, the housing program here, and the overall absence of a quantity of housing in this city to address the needs of workforce housing, and generally the idea that the office market will recover, and there has not been an excess of construction of office buildings, unlike some previous downturns. And so we believe that while the fundamentals are weak today, we build through many markets, not into one particular market. And again, we need to be cognizant of the marketplace. But again, the likelihood that the economy turns around and recovers such that we can fulfill the timeline I outlined for you, I think is indeed possible and very much our plan.
Very good. Traffic in the area of Flatbush Fourth and Atlantic Avenues is bad enough now. How will this project improve traffic conditions, or at least prevent them from getting worse?
Based on the extensive traffic analysis that was done in the EIS, there's a very comprehensive package of mitigation measures for traffic that includes physical roadway improvements, demand management strategies for game day, transit service recommendations, and traffic operational improvements. One of the most significant physical improvements is for the intersection of Atlantic and Flatbush and 4th Avenues. It would include increased pedestrian safety space, reconfigurations and redirections, and it will help to improve or avoid the backup along 4th Avenue that would exist without mitigation.
Okay, we have a follow-up parking lot question. Will the interim surface parking lots be used only for arena uses? If not, who else will have access to them and at what times of day?
They're available for the arena, but they'll also be managed, again, by a third-party parking provider. And the expectation is if there's demand for that parking that can be satisfied through making the parking available to the public, that would be the plan. And so again, at arena event nights, the parking would be targeted for arena use. But again, there are many other hours and many other periods of the year when that parking could be and would be made available to others.
Thank you. What happens to people and their possessions if they refuse to leave their homes after the state completes an eminent domain proceeding?
Empire State Development Corporation is, we recognize that in a project where we're exercising eminent domain, it impacts people's lives. We're very sensitive to that. We try to minimize the impact of our projects on folks who are displaced by the project. We have very little experience having to deal with people who refuse to leave. I think we have a good track record of assisting displaced residents and businesses in finding new locations and trying to assist them in dealing with what admittedly is a disruptive process. From a strictly legal perspective, if someone were to refuse to leave, there's a court process that Empire State Development Corporation would go through. It would be supervised by the condemnation judge in Kings County. Once the condemnation was approved and the property was needed for construction, Empire State Development Corporation would ask the judge to issue a writ of assistance. It's comparable to an eviction notice, which we then would deliver to the Kings County Sheriff. There would be a reasonable period of time that would pass. The individual would be given a deadline for leaving. If they refuse to leave, the sheriff would forcibly remove them and their possessions. Their possessions would be stored off-site for a reasonable period of time. We don't anticipate that happening. We're not in the habit of dealing with that situation on our projects.
I have a follow-up question. If the Court of Appeals finds that eminent domain may not be used in this case, then what?
Every court that has considered the use of eminent domain on this project has found it to be appropriate and lawful, and we're confident that we're going to prevail in the Court of Appeals, and we're committed to moving the project forward by the end of the year.
Okay, folks. You may not like the answers we get.